Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you everyone for being here. All the demigods, Krishna. So today is the auspicious occasion of the Disappearance Day of Srila Jagannath Babaji. And we're going to hear a little bit more about him later. I found a really wonderful lecture given by His Holiness Indradyumna Maharaj. So we'll watch that. He speaks about it. The lecture is actually about an hour and a bit long, so we'll only get to see a little bit of it. But we'll hear a little bit more about this great soul later. First, as is kind of customary on disappearance days, we'd like to sing a bhajan that's called Saparshida Bhagavad Viraha Janita Vila, or for devotees, they usually say Jayanilo Premadana, or just Jayanilo. So, and it's a song that is in the mood of separation by Narottam Das Thakur from Prarthana. And it's very powerful. So we can go through and read the translation first, and then read the sing together. Anybody?
He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srivas Acharya gone?
Where arise for Rupa Damodara and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatana? Where is Raghunatha Dasa, the savior of the fallen?
Where is my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopala Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go?
I will smash my head against a rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, a reservoir of all wonderful qualities?
Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps.
As you can see from the translation, this is the mood of a devotee who's looking for so many people who have passed away and passed on. So sometimes there could be a mood that because we recognize that the body is temporary and the material world is temporary and we as spirit souls are eternal and we often come together randomly in life, that we can become a little hard-hearted and think, who cares, kind of thing, you know? It's all temporary anyway. But here you can see that the actual mood of Narottam Das Thakur is one of longing to be in the association of these great souls again and missing them, really, really missing them. So much so that he actually even wants to smash his own head and enter into fire and give up his own life because he's longing to see them so much. So very much the mood of bhakti is very much about deep loving relationships, and then when someone passes, we actually do miss them, even though we understand so many things philosophically, so like that. So we have our wonderful Jagannath Priya Prabhu, who's here with us, and he's going to sing this song now. Hare Krishna.
No pressure.
Jayanilo Premadhana Karuna Prachur Prachur
Krishna. So So I think since the talk about Jagannath Babaji is quite long, it would be nice to start that sooner so we get as much in. We have until about 12:15, and then we will move on to do a Pushpanjali, like that. So, no, Indrajuna Maharaj is going to be on TV. He's not coming in person. Unfortunately, no, that's what I mentioned. The class will be quite long. Okay. Share that.
Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharine, Nivishesha Shunyavadi, Pashtadade Shatarne. Glories to Prabhupada. So, we've been speaking about a number of great acharyas who've appeared in our Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Until now, we've lectured on those who've appeared not long after the departure of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or at most a couple hundred years later. Today, however, I would like to speak about an acharya, you could say closer to home, so to speak, an acharya who appeared in the year 1780 and who lived to be about 145 years old. Someone whose name we often repeat in the Prema Dwani prayers, and that is the great Srila Jagannath Das Babaji. His glories are often on the tip of the tongues of modern day Gaudiya Vaishnavas who quote his prana mantra. Gora Hirbhava Bhumeshtvam Nudeshta Sajjana Pariya Vaishnava Sababoma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha. Quote, I offer my respectful obeisances to Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, who is respected by the entire Vaishnava community and who confirmed the discovery of the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared, unquote, his prana mantra. Perhaps Jagannath Das Babaji is best known in our ISKCON society as the Shiksha Guru, actually, of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who took a lot of instruction and inspiration from him. And it was actually Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur who gave Jagannath Das Babaji the title Sarvabhauma. Sarvabhauma. Sarvabhauma means Commander-in-Chief of the Vaishnavas. That's how he perceived him. So today, the two main sources of information on the life of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj that I used for this lecture were, number one, the Gora Parshada Chariti Vali and the Gaudiya Vaishnava Jivana. These are two compilations of biographies about our Vaishnava acharyas that are used in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. I also found information in the autobiography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Autobiography means that that person wrote his own biography. So the autobiography of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is called Swalikhita Jivani. Swalikhita Jivani. So in there I found, a lot of interesting information about Srila Jagannath Das Babaji. And I referred also to a few other biographical works about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Took a lot of research today within our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So our beloved Jagannath Das Babaji, he appeared in East Bengal, what we now call modern Bangladesh. And actually Bangladesh is the source of many of the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was previously called East Bengal. They had West Bengal and East Bengal, but when the British divided up India, East Bengal became Bangladesh, which is mainly a Muslim population. And as his name indicates, Jagannath Babaji was Babaji. And Babaji means one who renounces the world, basically to just hear and chant. To basically to sit and chant the holy names of Krishna all day long and most of the night. Typically it means that such a person in the renounced order of life, he will chant 300,000 names of Krishna a day. 300,000 names of Krishna a day. That's 192 rounds. Now, my godbrother, Dhanavir Goswami, recounts in his memories of Srila Prabhupada as follows. I'm quoting him. I remember one time we were in a garden and I asked Srila Prabhupada about chanting fast on japa. And Prabhupada said, quote, yes, you can chant, but you must hear all 32 syllables. Haridas Thakur was chanting fast, and he was chanting 300,000 names, unquote, for Srila Prabhupada. Then Dhanavir Goswami says, then Srila Prabhupada asked Karandar how many rounds that was. And Karandar calculated it was 192. So then Prabhupada said, quoting Maharaj, so if he was chanting 5 minutes per round, how many hours would that take? And Karandar replied, 16. So Srila Prabhupada said, yes, Haridas Thakur was chanting 16 hours or more of japa every day. This is like how the Babajis live. They dedicate their lives to the Yuga Dharma, repeating the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra day in and day out. And Chaitanya Charitamrita confirms that Haridas Thakur chanted 300,000 names a day. It's in Antya-lila, chapter 3, text 100. Nirjana Vani Kutira Kari Tulasi Sevana Ratri Dine Tina Laksha Nama Sankirtana. Quote, Haridas Thakur constructed a cottage in a solitary forest. There he planted a tulsi plant, and in front of the tulsi he would chant the holy names of the Lord 300,000 times a day. He chanted throughout the entire day and night, unquote. Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, generally when we hear about our acharyas, we hear of their preachers. But there's very little information that Srila Jagannath Das Babaji preached, let us say actively in public. Of course, people came to see him and he would preach to them, but not like we understand our present day acharyas. They're going out and they're traveling and spreading the holy names and so forth like this. So one might question then, how does he fit into our Guru Parampara if he's not an active preacher? And the answer is very simple. He preached the importance of renunciation. That's very important. It's a fundamental principle of Krishna consciousness, especially for a preacher, because one cannot convince people about the futility of material existence and the positive alternative of Krishna consciousness if he himself is attached to this world. You can't convince people to give up material life if you yourself are attached to this material world. So a preacher has to be renounced. So this is something that Jagannath Das Babaji showed us, how to be renounced. Important element in our lives as devotees. In the Bible, in Luke, let me remember, 16:13, it said, one cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. Mammon means like, sense gratification. So the principle of renunciation is important, it's essential in the life of every devotee. Of course, as we know, becoming renounced is a gradual process, and we can't imitate the renunciation of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji. We can't imitate, we can follow in his footsteps. Actually, he was very renounced. In preparation for this class, I read that during Chaturmasya is the 4 months of the rainy season when sadhus, even especially those who are traveling and preaching, they retire and they stay in one holy place and they just focus on Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shmaranam. So what to speak of Jagannath Das Babaji? He would really go into renunciation. I was reading for the first month of Chaturmasya, he would only eat 4 bananas in the evening. And during the second month, he would eat only guavas. And during the third month, he would only drink whey. And in the fourth month, he would only take boiled banana leaves without salt. Boiled banana leaves without salt. So that was his renunciation. So then what is our renunciation? Well, at initiation we promise, to follow the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. And, to go out and preach in the age of Kali, that itself is austerity and renunciation. To go into the concrete jungles and undergo so many austerities in order to give Krishna consciousness to the people, that's austerity, that's renunciation. Our renunciation is a little different than Jagannath Das Babaji. I remember one time reading that Srila Prabhupada was on a morning walk with some disciples, and one of the devotees was walking in bare feet, and it was a cold morning. So Srila Prabhupada looked at that devotee and he said, "Why aren't you wearing shoes?" So with a little touch of pride, that devotee smiled, and looking at Prabhupada, he said, "Prabhupada, I'm practicing austerities, renunciation." So Prabhupada said, "You don't have to do that. In Kali Yuga, there's so many austerities. You don't have to increase them by going barefoot. Now put some shoes on." Hare Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada also gave a very simple instruction regarding renunciation to my godbrother Satsvarup Maharaj at his sannyas initiation ceremony. Prabhupada was handing him the danda. As he handed him the danda, he said, "Never look back and think that you have left anything valuable behind, and never envy the position of the materialistic sense enjoyers." Of course, that's an instruction given to a sannyasi, but actually it applies to all of us. When we come to Krishna consciousness, we give up our old ways, our old way of life, so we should never think, "Oh, maybe I left something behind." There's such a wonderful future ahead of us. And we should never envy the position of those who appear to be enjoying. It's not really enjoying, they appear to be enjoying. So, we have to be reminded of these things from time to time. So that's our spirit of renunciation. Of course, this doesn't mean everybody has to be a sannyasi, because what is the principle of our renunciation? Our renunciation, real renunciation, means to understand nothing actually belongs to me. Everything belongs to Krishna. And therefore we use everything in Krishna's service. This is called Yukta Vairagya. This is our principle as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, especially now in the 21st century. We're using so much of the science and technology in spreading the message of Krishna consciousness. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Shikshartam Eke Purusha Purana. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari Kripam Buddhayastamaham Papadye. Translation: Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, who is descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. Our renunciation means to give up sinful activities or anything that's not connected to Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. So this is Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati. That's our renunciation, Yukta Vairagya. But we're all indebted to Srila Jagannath Das Babaji for his specific contribution to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati once said of Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, and all other Babajis in our line, including Gorkashore Das Babaji, quote, all these Vaishnavas adopted the lifestyle of the Paramahamsa, preaching the path of pure devotion by their example. Thus they are the objects of the greatest faith and reverence in the Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So we know very little, if anything, about Jagannath Das Babaji's early life, up until the moment he met Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For us, that's where the story begins. And he met Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur for the first time in the year 1880. And that's actually mentioned in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's magazine, The Harmonist. That was their first meeting. And then they met again for the second time in 1891. It's described in the Bhulvar district of Bengal. And it's written that they met on the day of Ekadasi. And they stayed up the whole night together discussing Krishna Katha. And it's interesting that I was reading on that occasion, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji advised Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to, quote, preach Gaura's names all over India and if possible all over the world. You can see in essence he is a preacher. He's going to preach to his disciples. So with some further research I found out that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually wrote about that second meeting they had. He wrote about his second meeting with Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, and it's so nice that we found this quote, his writings about that meeting, historic meeting. And this is what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote, quote, after spending the whole night in the Ekadasi, people from the entire village gathered together at 8 in the morning to go on Nagar Sankirtan through the streets. With the Venerable Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj in the head of the group, I saw people make their way to a temple. It is impossible to describe Srila Jagannath Das Babaji's ecstatic transformation during this Harinam Sankirtan. I have noted that though he is over 100 years old, he dances like a lion, sometimes singing out, quote, what divine names have Nitai brought? He has brought the name to the marketplace, and he is selling it for the price of one's faith. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, as Babaji Maharaj was singing, he cried and fell to the ground in ecstasy. I then saw something transpire which I have never seen before, and all present were affected by his mood. And what is that? That their eyes filled with tears, and their hair stood on end, and even though they could barely sing, they remained absorbed in the kirtan, and danced wildly in the association of Babaji Maharaj. Oh, to be in that kirtan again. Oh, to be in that kirtan again. So these are the words of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, written down by him. Remembering that wonderful kirtan party that he went on with Srila Jagannath Das Babaji. So this passage which he wrote, it reminds me of a quote we used in our last lecture, where Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in his Harinam Chintamani, quote, if one stays near a pure Vaishnava for some time, one can receive the bhakti devotional energy from his body, and devotion will soon appear within that devotee's heart. If one stays near a pure Vaishnava for some time, one can receive the bhakti, the devotional energy flowing from his body, and devotion will soon manifest it within that devotee's heart who's associating with that pure Vaishnava. And as I mentioned before, it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur who gave Jagannath Das Babaji the title Sarvabhauma, the commander-in-chief of the Vaishnavas. And now we understand why. Now, Jagannath Das Babaji had a very nice routine. He would spend 6 months of the year in Vrindavan and 6 months of the year in Navadvip. And when he was in Navadvip, I was reading, he would sometimes go to Calcutta. Someone may ask, what business does a Babaji who's chanting 192 rounds a day, which takes most of the day and night, what business does a renounced Babaji have in going to Calcutta? Well, the reason he went to Calcutta was to associate with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a residence in Calcutta, which he called Bhakti Bhavan. And the two of them would meet there. Again, they'd have kirtan, katha, prasad. And I was reading on one occasion, Jagannath Das Babaji came from Navadvip to Calcutta, and he brought a Govardhan Shila with him. And he gave that Shila as a present to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually worshipped that Shila for much of his life with great veneration and devotion because he had received it from the hand of Jagannath Das Babaji. I'm always reminded of Prabhupada's words to me that a gift from a Vaishnava is a very special thing. So, on one of his early visits to Vrindavan, Jagannath Das Babaji took initiation from Jagadananda Goswami of Vrindavan, Gaudiya Vaishnava. And while he stayed in Vrindavan, he lived out at Suryakund, Suryakund. But Jagannath Das Babaji took Babaji initiation. We say Babaji Vesha. Vesha means dress. He took the Babaji Vesha, the Babaji initiation, from a Babaji called Madhusudan Das Babaji. So sometimes we're a little apprehensive when we hear the word Babaji. Talking a lot about Babajis here today. Because we know Prabhupada warned us about, especially the present day Babajis out of Radhakund. Some of whom are not practicing properly, or have different philosophies than we follow. And some are just outright not practicing properly. But that does not mean there's not good Babajis. There's plenty. In fact, in our line, in our tradition, before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, those who took the renounced order became Babajis. There was no sannyas in our the sannyas order was not being practiced. Of course, Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, but and going way back in our tradition, Vedic tradition, there are sannyasis, of course, but after the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it was not so much practiced. It was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, actually, who you could say reintroduced the sannyas order for the purpose of preaching. If you want to be renounced, you wouldn't become a Babaji and sit in one place all day and chant, although that was authorized. You go out and preach the divine command. That was renunciation under Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, as continued by our beloved spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. He gave sannyas to the men to preach, to travel and preach. But before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, those who wanted to be renounced, they were called Babajis. So again, Jagannath Das Babaji's Babaji guru was Madhusudan Das Babaji, or Madhusudan Babaji. And Madhusudan Das Babaji is a very interesting personality. he was born in an aristocratic family, I was reading. But one day when he was only 12 years old, he overheard his parents discussing arrangements for his future marriage. He's 12. And his parents, they're thinking, well, how will we get him married? So he just walked out of the house. Took a little bag of a few possessions. He walked out of the house and he walked to Vrindavan to become an ascetic. So, that's what happened then. Yes, one day he was sitting on the bank of the Jamuna River, wondering when Krishna would send him a spiritual master. He was not initiated, he was a young boy. How will I get a spiritual master? And a few moments later, a very saintly Vaishnava appeared. And by Krishna's arrangement, he offered to initiate Madhusudan, who would soon become Babaji. And so Madhusudan Das Babaji took that as Krishna's arrangement, and he quickly bathed in the Jamuna, and then that saint initiated him into the Maha Mantra, along with a 10-syllable mantra. But then it's described that saintly person disappeared. He just quickly went away, without mentioning his name, who he was, and who was his guru, and what sampradaya he was in. It was more about, the intricacies of chanting these mantras, and the lifestyle he should live, and the goal. So although Madhusudan Das Babaji later consulted with, local Babajis and local renounced persons and saints, he couldn't find the answers to those questions, who's my guru, what's my sampradaya, what is the meaning of these mantras, how do I chant them? He couldn't get the answers. And because of the strict, you could say, Babaji orthodoxy of the times, the Babajis kind of saw him as an outcast, actually. And they wouldn't associate with him. It was pretty strict. He became very, you could say, depressed, obviously. But one day, Radha Krishna famously interceded on Madhusudan Das Babaji's behalf. Again, he was feeling, life was not worth living if you can't have association with other Vaishnavas, with other sadhus. How can you make advancement? Hari Guru Vaishnava, Bhagavata Gita, Nartam says. So one day he tied a large Govardhan Shila around his neck and he jumped into the Radhakund, the lake of Radhakund, with the intention of giving up his life. But as he sank down in those sacred waters, Shrimati Radharani and Krishna appeared in the Kund, and they untied the rope around his neck, and with their own hands they lifted him up, and they placed him on the shores of the banks of Radhakund. And then they wrote on tala leaves, the name of his guru. Radha Krishna wrote the name of his guru, his Guru Parampara, the process of chanting his mantras, and the intricacies of the type of devotional service he should practice, as well as many other subject matters. And they placed those leaves, those tala leaves, next to him, and then they disappeared. They had revealed everything he was hankering to know. He knew then what his guru's name was. His guru's name was Shri Uddhava Das, who was part of the line of Shri Baladev Vidyabhushana, in the disciplic succession of our Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. Yogic Shemam Bahamyam, Krishna says in the Gita, for my devotee, I protect what he has and I provide what he needs. So now that everything's authorized, and this news spread like wildfire throughout Vrindavan, and he was immediately accepted by all the Vaishnava sadhus in Vrindavan. Now, he lived most of his life at the Suryakund as a renounced Babaji. And it said that every day, I was reading every day when he lectured on Srimad Bhagavatam, a python, there's pythons in Braj, I've seen actually pythons, a python in Vrindavan would come and sit. How do pythons sit? I don't know, but he was, the python would be there listening to his entire explanation of that verse on Bhagavatam that morning. And as soon as Madhusudan Das Babaji finished the lecture, it's described the python would offer respects. He'd slither away every day. Every day that python would come. Because Babaji Maharaj would lecture every day. Whoever would come, but the python came every day. And one night, Srimati Radharani appeared in a dream to Madhusudan Das Babaji, a vision. And she told him, quote, in this kund, in this Surya Kund, there is a Govardhan Shila. And it has my crown, jewelry, and veil imprinted on it. It's the Govardhan Shila. So when I tried to explain that one time, Radharani put her crown, her jewelry, and her veil on that Govardhan Shila, it left an imprint. And somehow that Govardhan Shila ended up in the deep waters of Surya Kund. So Sri Radha said to Madhusudan Das Babaji in the dream, you please take this shila.
Is it?
Out, you find out where it is, and you worship it. So the next morning, Madhusudan Das Babaji, he followed the order of Srimati Radhika, and he swam and he went deep and he found that Shila. And I was told that because I've been to Suryakund many times, and I've been to the samadhi there of Madhusudan Das Babaji and Jagannath Das Babaji also. And that Shila weighs 100 kilos. But it's described that Madhusudan Das Babaji lifted it out of Suryakund, and because it became lighter than a flower. And you can still see that Shila today in his Bhajan Kutir at Suryakund, with the imprint of the paraphernalia of Srimati Radharani. And it's described that going there and chanting in the presence of that Govardhan Shila with the imprints of Radharani's paraphernalia helps one to remember and attain the company of great souls. And that's what we want. We want the company of great souls. So next time you come to Vrindavan and you're on Parikrama, you go to Suryakund and you find this Bhajan Kutir of Madhusudan Das Babaji, and you'll see that Shila and you chant and you pray for the company of great souls. Now local Brajavasis, they observe the disappearance of Madhusudan Das Babaji with a 10-day festival, starting on the 8th day of the waning moon in the month of Agrahayana. Agrahayana. I didn't know what Agrahayana was, so I found out Agrahayana is another name for Marga Shirsha. Marga Shirsha. We hear of Marga Shirsha. Krishna says in the Gita that he's this month. Marga Shirsha is the month of December and January. A month's, I am this Marga Shirsha, the month of December and January. So they have a festival. The people of Braj, they observe the disappearance of this great devotee of Krishna. And it's really interesting. The festival concludes with Chaushati Mahanta Bhoga. Chaushati Mahanta Bhoga, it means an offering of food to the 64 main associates of Lord Chaitanya. And how they do that, they cook a big feast and then they have these leaf plates, and they write the name of each one of these 64 main associates of Lord Chaitanya. And the prasadam is offered, and then they put it on the plate. There's 64 plates you can see lined up next to Surya Kund for all the 64 main associates of Lord Chaitanya. It's a wonderful festival. Now, it's said that yogis, they keep their tejas, meaning their spiritual strength, in their hair. You see, the yogis, they always have the big top knots. They grow their hair long for a reason. And they tie their hair up here. And then they keep their spiritual strength in their hair. But the spiritual strength of Babaji's is described is in their tulsi malas, meaning not just their beads, but whatever tulsi malas they wear. You see in Vrindavan, the Babajis, they're all wearing big beads around their neck and around their chest. That's where they keep their spiritual strength. So throughout his life, Madhusudan Das Babaji, he wore 3 large tulsi bead necklaces his whole life. And then when he was departing this world, he was on his, you could say, his deathbed as he was leaving, he was still wearing them. But as he was leaving this world, these beads that he wore, like they even wear them when they bathe, they never take those beads off, I see, the Babajis. So as leaving this world, just before he left, he took off those 3 sets of beads and gave them to one of his beloved disciples. And those beads have been handed down through generations of guru, disciple, guru, disciple, guru, disciple, for quite some time. So a few years ago, one very elderly, esteemed Vaishnava at Radhakund, he had possession of those 3 necklaces. He would wear them. And through the years, I became very close to him because, well, isn't it? We often go out to Radhakund, and you know, I like the association of saintly persons. So we'd sometimes do parikrama together, and we talk about Krishna consciousness, and we became close. And I was in Vrindavan some years ago, and one auspicious day I received a message that he wanted to see me at Radhakund. So he came out, and he began just glorifying Srila Prabhupada, and he said, we're just sitting here and chanting. He said, your Guru Maharaj took the chanting all over the world. And look at the result, he said. All of you fine young boys and girls, from all countries of the world, he said, all countries of the world, you become Bhakti Vaishnavas. And this is all the glory of your Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. So he said, I'm getting elderly, I don't have much time left in this world. I think it's appropriate that one of the devotees in your movement, one of the disciples of Srila Prabhupada, he said, receives these 3 necklaces. He said, every important sadhu in Vrindavan has been asking me for these beads for years, but I want to give them to you. So that's what he did. On the shores of Radhakund, he gave me Madhusudan Das Babaji's 3 necklaces, which I wear on special occasions. And anyway, I'd like to show you those 3 necklaces. I have them here with me. I brought them out today. This is one. You can see how old they are. They're shining like glass. This is because of just having been so old, hundreds of years old. That's one set. This is another set. And this is the set that you may have seen me wear on a number of occasions. I'll put it on. I'll put a couple on. Hare Krishna. So this is my good fortune, and I'm always praying that that these gifts will make me pure at heart, remove all contamination in my heart, and empower me to represent my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, to go out as he did all over the world and preach Krishna consciousness, bring people back to Vrindavan so they can have the Krishna conscious experience. So, Hare Krishna. So, a little emotional here, I'm sorry. So there's a number of wonderful pastimes of Jagannath Das Babaji in Braj. After he's taken initiation and he's taken his Babaji vesh, his Babaji dress from Madhusudan Das Babaji, he also stayed out at Suryakund. Now Suryakund is where, of course, Radharani goes in the afternoon to worship the sun god and ask for the blessings to be with Krishna. And Jagannath Das Babaji lived out there. He had a bhajan kutir out there, not far actually from Madhusudan Das Babaji's bhajan kutir. And our Jagannath Das Babaji, he worshipped very beautiful deities of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda out there. And they were made of bell metal. But when they were polished, they looked like gold. So the word kind of spread. And one night when Jagannath Das Babaji was sleeping, some dacoits, some thieves came, and they stole the golden-looking deities of Gornitai. Sono Garanga, Mahaprabhu was called Sono Garanga, that deity is very golden. But as these thieves were running away, carrying these deities from Gornitai, suddenly, I think it was about 300 meters away from the bhajan kutir of Jagannath Das Babaji, they went totally blind. Couldn't see a thing. And immediately they developed extremely high fevers. They were just, high fevers, they couldn't see. They became terrified. They knew it was a reaction for what they'd just done, stealing those deities from such a sadhu. So they dropped the deities, and they tried running, but they couldn't run because they couldn't see, and they were boiling with this fever. So it's described they crawled out of Suryakund and somehow made it back to their residences or their homes they were living. So I read one acharya, he made a very interesting comment. He said, quote, "The thieves went blind and got high fevers, causing them to abandon the deities because the Lord cannot bear separation from his devotee, Jagannath Das Babaji." So the Lord arranged this pastime. But after this pastime, Jagannath Das Babaji became afraid for his beloved deities, because Suryakund's way out in the jungle of the forest of Vrindavan, it's easier for thieves to come and do these type of things. So Jagannath Das Babaji took those two deities into Vrindavan proper, into the village, and he entrusted them to a temple there. And then he went back to Suryakund. But I was reading a few weeks later, he called his servant and he said, "I cannot live without deities. Please find me others." Sometimes we hear that deity worship is for neophyte devotees. It's not so. The Goswamis each have their personal deities. Yes, it is our first contact, one of our first contacts with Krishna, a very personal contact with the Lord in his Archa Vigraha form. But we see advanced devotees, they worship their deities with all their heart and soul. Pandanahe. So he told his servant, he gave the deities to a temple. He said, "I cannot live without deities. Please find me others." So let's see, some more Vrindavan pastimes with Jagannath Das Babaji. Oh yeah. One morning, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji was walking down the streets of Vrindavan when a street sweeper handed him a roti, a chapati, which Srila Jagannath Das Babaji immediately respected. He took that prasad. But the word spread very quickly throughout Vrindavan. And it it's mentioned that all the high-class gentlemen of Braj, they were shocked that, quote, a saint had received food from the hand of a street sweeper, unquote. So a large group of very distinguished citizens of Vrindavan, they, later that day, they approached Jagannath Das Babaji, and they said, quote, Babaji Maharaj, you're the crest jewel of all Vrindavan. It pains us to hear anyone criticizing you, but now everyone's talking about you. How is it that you, a pure saint, accepted food from the hand of someone so low as a street sweeper? Unquote. So, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji replied. Listen to his wonderful reply. He said, Sirs, before descending from the spiritual world to this planet, Lord Krishna ordered 88,000 saints to take birth in various families of Braja. And since that time, those saints have engaged themselves in service to the holy Dham. That sweeper, from whom I accepted the roti, was one of those 88,000 saints. She should be worshipped. Unquote. From all these distinguished gentlemen, boom, they fell down on the ground, touched his feet, and asked for forgiveness. He said, you go ask her for forgiveness. You don't ask me, you ask her. So they went. So, let's see. Oh yes. Once near to where Jagannath Babaji was living, I don't know if it was in Vrindavan or Navadvip, because again, 6 months, but one time near to where he was living, a dog gave birth to 5 puppies. And whenever he would take prasadam, those little puppies would come around. Well, when they were puppies, the puppies would come around and they'd lick the food from his plate as he was eating. Now, Babaji Maharaj had a servant, we mentioned that earlier, his name was Bihari Das. So one day, Bihari Das, he saw the little puppies like that licking. The prasadam of Jagannath Das Babaji's plate, so he ran over and he drove them away. But Jagannath Das Babaji scolded him. He scolded the servant. He said, Bihari, if you wish to drive these dogs off, you may take my plate away as well. I should not eat today. So Bihari, he protested. He said, but Guru Maharaj, these dogs are unclean. But Jagannath Das Babaji said, no, these dogs are Dhamvasis, residents of the holy Dham. You must treat them with respect. This is a good point for all of us when we're in the holy Dham. We should be very careful not to disrespect any living creature, any living entity. No, these dogs are Dhamvasis, residents of the holy Dham. You must treat them with respect. So, one time Srila Prabhupada said that a pure devotee possesses, quote, all mystic powers. And I was reading one time Jagannath Das Babaji requested his servant, Bihari Das, to read to him from Chaitanya Charitamrita. But Bihari Das, he became very shy, and he said, but my dear master, you know I'm illiterate, I can't read a word. So Jagannath Das Babaji said, no, simply look at the shlokas and you will be able to easily recite them. So he started doing that. He started looking at the verses. Didn't know how to read, but he started looking at the verses. And an hour later, Bihari Das was able to recognize and read all of the words. And very soon he was lovingly narrating the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from Chaitanya Charitamrita for Jagannath Das Babaji. From that day on, he could read very nicely. I read very eloquently is the word used. He would read very eloquently. So we often say, don't we? Along with the instructions of the spiritual master comes the ability to execute them. And our acharyas have said that anything is possible for one who has received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees. Anything is possible for one who has received the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees. Now, as would be expected, in time, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji's fame spread far and wide. As a result, one day, some young aspiring devotees came to be trained by him in Krishna consciousness out at Suryakund. But the first thing that Jagannath Babaji did, noticing that the boys would, often doze off during japa in class, what he did is that nearby his ashram in Suryakund, there was a big garden full of flowers and fruits and vegetables. So each day after the morning program, he would take those aspiring boys and make them work all day long in the garden. And sometimes during the afternoon, he would walk by, chanting japa, and he would say, "Hare Krishna, keep up the good work, boys." So some months later, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur visited Jagannath Das Babaji's ashram at Suryakund. And when he arrived, some of those young devotees, they came up to Bhaktivinoda Thakur and they complained. They said, "Sir, Guru Maharaj, Jagannath Das Babaji, he's supposed to be training us in meditation and how to chant the holy names and how to study the scriptures and how to, be good devotees. But all day long for months, we're just working in this garden all day and evening." So what did Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur do? He shot right back at them. He said, "Gentlemen, until you are purified at heart through the practice of devotional services, your attempts at meditation, deep study of the scripture and focusing on chanting will simply result in daydreaming and sleep. So keep working in the garden and purify your hearts until Jagannath Das Babaji feels you're ready to hear without dozing off." Yeah. So as Jagannath Das Babaji got older, his body became very bent. I mean, he lived to be 145, so we've seen older people here in Vrindavan, isn't it, that they're bent over. And his skin became very soft. So his facial skin would sometimes, it would go over his eyes, cover his eyes. And so he couldn't see. So his servant, Bihari Das, would carry Jagannath Das Babaji in a basket on his head. Because he couldn't walk properly because he was all bent over. And he couldn't see properly. So Bihari was actually a very stout devotee, so he put a basket on his head. Guru Maharaj would come in the basket. And he'd carry him. They'd go around like that. And it's mentioned that wherever there was a roaring kirtan, Jagannath Das Babaji would jump out. Although you could say he was crippled in a sense. He all bent over, he couldn't walk well. When there was kirtan, he'd jump out of the basket onto the ground screaming, "Nitai ki nam ineti re. Nitai ki nam ineti re. Oh Nityananda, what a wonderful name you have brought to this world." We heard that earlier, but there's the Bengali. "Nitai ki nam ineti re. Oh Nityananda, what a wonderful name you've brought to this world." And isn't it true, Prabhu? So yes. Now, in his pranam mantra, we hear about how he helped discover the Yogapeeth, the actual place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birth or his appearance. And you could say that's probably one of the most significant of his pastimes. At that particular time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was searching for the actual place of Lord Chaitanya's birth. And we call that place Yogapeeth, where the Lord appears. Like Krishna's Yogapeeth is in Mathura, so Mahaprabhu's Yogapeeth is in Navadvip, Mayapur. So at this point in history, during the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there was a lot of discussion, arguments, disagreements as to where the actual Yoga Pith was. Some people say it was here, some people said it was there. And pilgrims were coming, and the mahant of that particular temple or place, and he was benefiting from the pilgrims coming and giving donations. So there was a lot of tension going on, like what's the real place where Mahaprabhu appeared? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was searching for that place. He was looking at old maps and discussing it with sadhus, etc. And there's mention of the Yoga Pith. I was reading the other day in Bhakti Ratnakara. I found a verse in Bhakti Ratnakara, a general description of Mahaprabhu's birthplace in India. It says, quote, "In the center of Navadvip, there is a place called Mayapur. It was here in Mayapur that the Supreme Lord Gaurachandra took his birth," unquote. That's there in Bhakti Ratnakara. But the exact spot, no one could agree. So one day, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is looking out from his home across the fields of Mayapur, and he saw in a forest of tulsi plants, a palm tree. In the middle of the forest of tulsi plants, there was a palm tree. And emanating from that palm tree was described a mystical light, an aura. So in his heart, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur realized that this was what he was searching for. This is a sign, a divine sign. This is the actual place of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. But then he thought, if I say this is the place of Mahaprabhu's birth or appearance, many people will not agree. But if this Sarvabhauma, this commander-in-chief of the Vaishnavas, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji says so, people will accept. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur went and he asked Srila Jagannath Das Babaji to come with him. And Jagannath Das Babaji's servant put him in the basket, Jagannath Das Babaji in the basket, and they walked to that place. We now know, all of us know, there's a beautiful temple there, Gaudiya Math Temple. And they walked there, and as soon as they arrived, again, Jagannath Das Babaji leapt out of that basket, and he started dancing like a madman on that very spot where Mahaprabhu appeared. That very spot. And that confirmed it. For Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, yes, this is the place. Jagannath Babaji said, yes, this is the place of Mahaprabhu's appearance. So for most people in Navadvip at that time, that's the only proof they needed. To be convinced that that was the Yoga Pith, the appearance side of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And later Bhaktivinoda Thakur, of course, he constructed a temple there, a beautiful temple, which is there to this very day. Sometimes when we're all in Parikrama in Mayapur, we go there to remember this pastime.
Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki. So there's still not that much longer left. We got pretty far through. But it's time for the Pushpanjali, which we'll do just before the arti. So we'll ask everyone to please stand, come forward. Face Jagannath Das Babaji, Maharaj's picture here. And we'll go through the Vaishnavacharya prayers, Mangalacharya prayers. And then we'll go past Jagannath Das Babaji's prayers, and then we will come back and repeat his pranam mantra, which we heard in Maharaj's class also. And when we do that, then we'll say Esha Pushpanjali, and then we will go up and offer some flowers to Jagannath Das Babaji. So make sure when you take flowers, there's not so many of us, there's plenty of flowers, but make sure that when you offer the flowers to Jagannath Das Babaji, you save enough in your hand that you can do it 3 times. Okay? feet. Om Jnana Timirandasya Viranjana Shalakaya Chakshu Ummilitangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Gena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swam Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Harakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Sha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabhadye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jwala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudappasadanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaurakishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralamba Vasambode Parambujaya Te Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Bodhayate Gaura Virbhava Bhumistvam Nirdeshta Sajjana Priyaha Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Yevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Maha Varanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Goratvishe Namaha Panchatattva Makam Krishna Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktyākyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surutau Pangor Mama Manda Matirgati Matsarvasya Haramboja Radha Maramo Mohana Divyan Vrindaranyam Kalpa Jamudaha Shriman Ratnagara Simhasana Stav Shriman Radha Srila Govinda Deva Prestalabi Sevyamana Smarami Shriman Rasarasambi Vamsivata Tatastitaha Karshan Venu Swaner Gopi Gopinata Shri Stunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Hanamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I'll go back and do Jagannath Babaji's Gauravir Bhava Bhumes Tvam Nirdeshta Satjana Priyaha Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Esha Pushpanjali Jai Shri Jagannath Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Gauravir Bhava Bhumes Tvam Nirdeshta Satjana Priyaha Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Esha Pushpanjali.
Esha Pushpanjali.
Jai Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki
Jai.
This will be the final offering. Gauravir Baba, Bhumistvam, Nidishta, Sajjana Priyaha, Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, Shri Jagannathaya, Te Namaha, Esha Pushpanjali. Jai Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Disappearance Day Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Ki Jai. So now we'll have simultaneous Guru Puja Kirtan and Arti for their lordships. So we can face this way, well, towards both actually. But we'll be having Arti also to Jagannath Das Babaji Srila Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevalavakati Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevalavakati Sadma.
Shri Guru Charana Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine to the subject of hunger. Say, see, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki
Yay.
Scott Founder Charge, Srila Prabhupada ki
Yay.
BBT Founder, Srila Prabhupada ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Singaho, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Govinda Shama Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhana ki Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar ki, Murchakra Bhagavana ki, Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki, Brahmanaya Transano Bhakti Shibhishin ki, Tirabhav Srila Jagannath Das Babaji ki, Nitai Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada Lada Daine. Pralada Lada Daine. Hiranyakashi Purvaksha. Hiranyakashi Purvaksha. Shira Tankana Karaye. Shira Tankana Karaye. Ito Nirsimho Bharato Nirsimho. Ito Nirsimho Bharato Nirsimho. Yato Yato Yami Tato Nirsimho. Yato Yato Yami Tato Nirsimho. Ahir Nirsimho Hirdaye Nirsimha. Ahir Nirsimha Hirdaye Nirsimha. Nirsimha Madhim Cha
Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Jagannath Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Go Pranandi. Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. Thank you all for being here. So this concludes the program in honor of His Holiness Jagannath Babaji. So now we will continue and honor Prasad at the back of the hall for all the guests and everyone who's here. I think Jagannath Prabhu is just bringing that down now. So and let's see, our next festival will be this coming Saturday. We have a wonderful festival, Pushpotsavam, and we're going to be showering their lordships with many kgs of flowers, which will be arriving today, by the way. So if anyone would like to stick around to help with unpacking the flowers and putting them into the fridge, and you're most welcome. So nice seva. And also tomorrow evening, Friday evening, and Saturday morning, we will have opportunities to come for depetaling the flowers. So everyone comes and they sit in circles and they take the petals off the flowers in preparation for the kind of pushpa abhishek that will happen for their lordships on Saturday. So all the information is available on the website, and also if you want to be part, if you're not part of the WhatsApp group, you can join that, temple newsletter, so many different ways. And then our next festival after that will be on Tuesday, the 3rd of March, on March 3rd, and that will be the Divine Appearance Day of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gaurpurni Mahamahotsav ki! So we're in perpetual festival season in the Hare Krishna movement. Every day is a festival, and that means every step is a dance and every word is a song. So you're all most welcome. And the feast will be for free. If anyone would like to make a donation, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.